Energy media readers, as most of you will know, the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and Finance Minister Bill Morneau announced a major economic package, comes out to about $30 billion to deal with the COVID-19 economic crisis. And to talk to us today about that, and also to give us some ideas on how that maybe can be improved, I'd like to welcome Adam Legge, who's the president of the Business Council of Alberta. So welcome to the interview, Adam.
Thanks, Markham, for having me.
Now, it's a really big package and there's a lot in there. I've done a piece already today. So why don't we hit the highlights of what you think are the highlights, and then after that we can talk about some ways that you think it can be improved.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think we continue to see these things evolve and build on each other. So there's been a variety of things that have been done at the federal government level. We've seen everything from overnight interest rate reductions. We've seen shoring up of credit and liquidity with EDC and Business Development Bank of Canada. We've seen other sort of commitments in terms of those Canadians that are isolated or stranded to get back to Canada. This is now moving into some of the areas of what I would call protecting people, protecting Canadians, where you saw a lot of different mechanisms to support people from an income standpoint if they are either isolated or if they're unable to access employment insurance, if they're in the gig economy or self-employed or et cetera. So beginning to see that, you're beginning to see some funds flowing for more vulnerable Canadians, Indigenous communities, a whole host of things, and some additional capacity.
Yeah, I found that really interesting because, as a small business owner who has admittedly seen some revenue evaporate in the last week or so, we were very interested to see that self-employed people and small businesses are going to be a focus of this package, and we'll see how it works at the end of the day. There's always many a slip betwixt cup and lip, as they say, but it looked pretty good so far. Now, you had some ideas that you tweeted about yesterday. Why don't you talk about those and how they might improve the package that the Prime Minister announced?
Sure. We're really framing our proposals to all levels of government, quite frankly, around three key themes: protecting people, protecting business, and protecting the economy. So what was welcome today from the federal government was that I think they're beginning to see the kinds of things that need to be in place. I proposed that there be a basic guaranteed income for Canadians for an interim period of time, so that all Canadians don't have to worry about things like rent and basic necessities. We've called for some bold proposals around suspending rent and mortgage payments. We've seen the big banks now come out with that, and that they can suspend mortgage payments for 6 months. We've suggested they suspend income and property tax payments for an interim period. So we're beginning to see some of the tools in place that enable people to not have to worry about income. What we're wanting to see is that the order of magnitude of these programs be scaled. And I understand the federal government's probably doing this incrementally because they don't want to release everything all at once, but we need to be seeing something that's in the order of magnitude of about 10% of GDP, which would be about $130 billion in terms of total package. We're looking at a package of the direct money outlays are about $27 billion. There's about $55 billion in tax deferrals. But we need to be thinking orders of magnitude bigger.
Yeah, I really like your idea of the guaranteed basic income, and it's been a hobby horse of Senator Hugh Segal for many, many years, and it's just, I think, kind of percolating up to the national, public discourse now. How do you think that would work?
Well, I think there's a difference between an emergency basic income and a more long-term basic income. And what we're proposing is more of an emergency base. And what we're saying is that actually to minimize the amount of administration and bureaucracy that happens is what we actually do is you send it to every single Canadian over the age of 18. You can figure out how to reclaim it, recapture it through the tax process in future years and whatnot for people that earn over a certain threshold. But for now, just get it out the door. Our experience in the 2013 floods in Calgary was that the more bureaucracy, the more paperwork, the more administration you have to apply, the harder it is for people to actually get that money. And so what I was worried about today's announcement is there's all these little funds and little programs that you have to apply for. I'm worried that the speed and efficiency of money going out the door will be too slow. And so we hope that they'll actually just streamline it, give money to Canadians now, get it out the door, worry about it on the back end.
Yeah, I can see your point, because as I was reading through the background around that, I kind of had the same impression. And I was imagining, well, if I was, well, we're self-employed, so how would this work for us? And well, we have to pick up the phone and we have to talk to Canada Revenue Agency for one program, and then we have to talk to somebody else for another program, and multiply that by thousands, well, millions across the country, and you can see how cumbersome it would become.
Yeah, it's administratively burdensome and cumbersome. So I think if you just were to make a mechanism through the tax filer records and just get a certain amount of income going to every single Canadian, regardless of whether they're employed or own a small business or an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. These are the times where we need to just get money in the hands of Canadians, and to put more restrictions or more process around it is just going to really sink the impact of what it could be doing if we did it without any burden.
Sure. Adam, final question. Now, you've got quite a number of very prestigious and large corporations as members in your business council, and some of the more progressive ones, which I like. And what are your members telling you about how government should handle this?
We're just in the process of finalizing a letter to the Prime Minister, and I can tell you that our members' number one focus is the public health of Albertans and Canadians, and that is what they are really emphasizing that we encourage government to do. Now is not the time to be quibbling about some of the smaller details. Let's just make sure Canadians are healthy, make sure they're protected, make sure they have the ability to stay home, make sure they don't have to worry about rent and mortgages, they don't have to worry about where to get groceries and where to get the basic necessities. That is job number one. After that, it is about protecting the companies that employ those Canadians and making sure that the liquidity is available, that they are not going underwater, that they are not at risk of failure, and that we can have companies that are able to hire people on the other end of this crisis.
Well, maybe just one more final question, Adam, because of course, layered onto the issue around the COVID-19 pandemic is the oil price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia. We saw today Western Canadian Select was down to $8.53. I don't remember it ever getting that low, breaking the $10 threshold during the 2015-2016 downturn. So how does that wrinkle affect how your members and how your organization thinks about these policies and strategies?
Well, I think it adds another layer of complexity, and that so many of these companies have seen so much significant or value erosion as a result of simply the price of oil in the past 2 weeks. So it minimizes their ability to have staying power throughout this crisis. It minimizes their ability to keep people on payroll. So it really adds an additional layer of difficulty for them to be able to survive and weather this. Having said that, everyone that I am talking to is still very focused on maintaining the health of their employees, the safety of their employees, the welfare of their employees. That is their asset base over time. And so, it's an added complexity for Alberta. It's an added complexity for oil and gas businesses. It's just, it's a second gut punch when you just don't need it. It's kicking when we're down. And all I can say is that, fingers crossed and hope for the support and success of these companies over time.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? It really is a 1-2 punch, isn't it? It's probably unprecedented in the history of the country, I would imagine. Well, thank you very much, Adam. Really appreciate this. We'll look forward to chatting with you in the future.
Thanks for having me, Markham.